I, 39, lost my late wife 6 years ago. I have a 16-year-old son Daniel and I recently got engaged to my fiancée of 2 years. Her mom and I aren't on good terms because of how she behaves. She's a controlling, self-centered, Dolly Parton wannabe. I learned to ignore her crap, but she's been annoying Daniel and criticizing his personality regularly. He's a private kid and still hasn't gotten used to the new family dynamic, but he's in therapy and is doing fine. She keeps diagnosing him left and right, calling him antisocial, autistic and other crap. Fact is, Daniel is a shy, well-mannered kid, but people confuse that with being antisocial. Mother-in-law tried several times to force Daniel to open up by embarrassing him with personal questions on family dinners and test his personality type. I've realized the effect her behavior had on Daniel, so I gave him the choice to no longer be in the same room and house as mother-in-law, and he appreciated this a lot. Mother-in-law didn't like that Daniel kept his distance and no longer visits, and kept whining about how spoiled he will become for her daughter to deal with. I told her to stop bringing it up, but she cried, "I'm just doing this for Danny." Last week she visited unexpectedly wanting to say hi to Daniel. After Daniel greeted her, he went into the bathroom and she went into the living room with my fiancé. I was in my bedroom when Daniel came and said his journal was gone. We looked for it, but didn't find it. I asked my fiancé, who was alone in the kitchen, but didn't see it. I paused for a second to ask where mother-in-law was. My fiancé said in the living room, but I saw her coming down the stairs. I asked where she was, she said the bathroom. I saw her purse in hand, so I bluntly asked if she took Daniel's journal. She looked offended and called for my fiancé when I insisted on seeing inside her purse. She wanted to leave, but I didn't let her. Fiancé told me to stop it, but I insisted, and the journal was there. Mother-in-law tried to explain this was her only chance to get to know Daniel better because she cares about him. I blew up at her and berated her for stealing from my son and told her she's banned from my house for the stunt she pulled. She argued with me then left. My fiancé apologized for her but said banning her from the house was over the top. It backlashed and father-in-law argued and hoped his daughter realizes how freaking abusive I am and call off the wedding for refusing to apologize to mother-in-law. Fiancé said her family won't come to the wedding till I reconcile with her mom and cancel the ban, but I won't let my son be disrespected in his own house and asked my fiancé to understand. I'm refusing to reconcile, but am aware this could ruin my relationship with all my in-laws, not just mother-in-law, and my fiancé thinks I'm selfish to cause drama. Not the idiot. But you realize that your fiancé is putting her desire to not want an argument with her family above your son's well-being, right? She should have been standing up for your son against her mother for all her prior behavior already, but the fact that she's actively choosing to basically side with her mother on this by not defending your son is abhorrent. Do you really want to be with someone who would put her own comfort over your son's well-being? Do you really think your son will be able to trust your fiancé? Not the idiot, except for the part where you compare this horrible woman to the amazing and lovable Dolly. Dolly doesn't deserve that type of slander. Keep standing up for your son. If your fiancé isn't on his side in this and thinks her mother's fake tears are more important than him feeling safe in his own home, you've got more to think about than just this one situation, because I foresee the kids starting to post here before the ink is dry on the guest book. Not the idiot. And I can't tell you how deeply disturbing it is that this woman did the terrible thing of stealing an adolescent's personal journal to invade his privacy and lying about it, and most of all, that your fiancé doesn't understand why that merits the death penalty of ever entering your house again. To me, this complete moral bankruptcy is not a matter for a mere apology, let alone a second-hand apology. I can't imagine how amazing your fiancé would have to be for you to be willing to have a permanent connection with his family. I, 35, was married to Zoe, 32, for 6 years. We got a divorce at the beginning of last year. She had thought I was cheating, I wasn't, and cheated in retaliation. I found out and ended things immediately. We didn't have any kids and the house was mine, so it was a really quick process. Zoe didn't take the divorce well. She wanted to work on things. I believe that there's no coming back from infidelity like that. She told everyone she knew that I had given up on our marriage and abandoned her. That's just a little background on the situation. My grandmother is an amazing woman who needs round-the-clock care due to her deteriorating mental state. Physically, she's probably healthier than any of us. But she has trouble remembering things, if she took meds, shut off the stove, etc. She lives in a really great group home, and I see her often. After our divorce, Zoe asked if she could keep visiting my grandmother, and I said yes. However, I began to realize that Zoe was using my grandmother as a tool to get back in my good graces. She was giving my grandmother framed photos from our wedding to keep on her bedside. She would tell her stories as if the two of us were still married. She would give my grandmother messages to give me, Zoe told me to tell you the love of her life, etc. It happened for a short time before I contacted Zoe and told her to stop. It was confusing and frustrating for me and my grandmother when I had to constantly be reminding her that Zoe and I weren't married anymore. Zoe stopped for a while, and the only issue we were having was that she'd happen to come to visit my grandmother whenever I would be there. My grandmother has a calendar on her wall where I mark down all the days I'm going to come see her. I'm pretty sure my ex was taking photos of it or something. Recently, I began seriously dating a woman, Claire. On my last Zoom call with my grandmother, she was extremely agitated, and when I asked her why, she said she was extremely upset to hear from Zoe that I was throwing away our relationship to date an underage floozy. My girlfriend is 28 and a paralegal. I had told my grandmother about her a few weeks ago, and she had been extremely happy for us. I called Zoe and told her she wasn't allowed to visit my grandmother anymore. I called her home and told them not to accept calls or visits from her. My ex-wife says I'm depriving her of a woman she sees as her own blood. I say that this is the last time I'm going to have her emotionally manipulate my grandmother and upset her for Zoe's own selfish reasons. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. You've done the right thing in protecting your grandma. This isn't about Zoe, but about keeping your grandma from being confused and agitated. It's harder for grandma to cope every day if she's getting conflicting information and can't process reality properly. Zoe is using grandma to manipulate you without caring about the consequences on grandma. That's not the actions of someone who sees her as blood, but the actions of someone who doesn't care about her at all. Not the idiot. This whole situation is a sad one because if your grandmother enjoys her visits, then it's sad to have to take them away from her because of her sick and twisted mind games. I'm really sorry she's putting you two through this and proud of you for finally putting your foot down. It might be hard, but don't give in to her demands. She lost all ties to you and your family when she cheated on you, and now she'll have to suffer. I hope your grandmother can respect and understand your decision. Good luck to you. So, the home and your family are doing everything in their power to help grandma remember things that happened. They are teaching her ways to get past memory problems, working with her on how to keep track of things, doing daily memory exercises with her. Then your ex comes in, says, "No, it's not like that, it's this," and destroys any work that may have been done by selling a false idea. Abuse, cruel, and not the actions of someone who cared for your grandmother. Keep her away. She is an abuser, not the idiot. Brief intro. I own a PR comms agency, and for some reason my main clientele seems to be with well-known people over brands. This means I help their PR, how they come across to the public, cover their digital marketing, etc. For me, I don't care about a celebrity. I just see them as a different type of brand, and it's usually more interesting. I was in London having a meeting where one of my friends, one of a group of 5 girls I've known since school, saw me with a potential client. It was obviously work related as I had my laptop out showing her stuff, and she had paperwork. My friend spotted me and came over, which was a little irritating, and I quickly got up and stopped her coming close to explain I'm in a work meeting, sorry, I'll text later. She looked super pissed I didn't introduce her to the well-known person. I'll be honest, hardly knew who the woman was myself, but apparently my friend was a fan of hers. Anyway, I didn't think anything of it. The meeting finished and my friend had left already. I texted her later that day to say, "You looked well, sorry I couldn't chat." And she replied, "To be honest, I don't even know who you are. What even is your job? All the girls are confused now, and you were really rude for stopping me joining you." And I replied, "My agency, haha. Pretty sure you know I have a PR comms agency. I can't let my friend sit in a work meeting, of course." Then got this reply, "Right, and you just happen to not tell us you hang out with celebrities. Why don't you include us in this? We want to be involved in your life. We'd love to meet these people." I was surprised and thought perhaps she's joking and simply went bloody non-disclosure agreements. Haha. No reply. Later that evening, one of the other girls from the group phoned me and basically had a huge go at me for lying about my job and not sharing exciting news with them and asked who else I work with. So I've obviously been whined about to the group. I replied I have non-disclosure agreements in place, I can't share that information with anyone, to which she scoffed and said, "Don't be so ridiculous, you're so up yourself, like they mean anything, and we wouldn't say anything anyway, do you not trust us?" Spoiler, they'd tell everyone. She then went on a massive rant to say what an idiot I am and how I think I'm better than the group these days. She for some reason said I think I'm above them for not updating social media, I use it as a job, it's a break to be off it. I don't share anything or boast. If I'm asked how work is, I say it's going well, thanks, still paying the bills. I never go into details as it's close to impossible without sharing anything. My biggest selling point to clients is that I never share or promote who I work with, and I really stick to it. I've now been removed from the WhatsApp groups as I'm clearly a liar and not a good friend. I feel like I'm going crazy. Am I the idiot? I'm just sticking to my contracts. Not the idiot. Good riddance. Your friends expect you to jeopardize your business and professional reputation so they can annoy a public figure trying to work. This also smacks of tall poppy syndrome. You're clearly succeeding in life, and their seething jealousy over the access you have to people they want to meet is certainly not a weight you should carry. Spoken from someone that knows they should be excited for you, not excluding you, because you have a successful career and you won't ruin it for their meet and greet entitlement. Not the idiot. It's possible you could be less cagey with your job, but honestly their reaction is ridiculous. When you explained it was a work meeting, a real friend would have said, "Oh, hey, catch up later," and leave. It's insane, they thought to sit down at a work meeting with you because of celebrity. I get not talking about your work, I hate the overemphasis people put on work in socialization. It seems insane to me to be upset you don't post work details on social media. Keep your boundaries, actual friends will respect them. Not the idiot. Do they not realize it that, if you tell them about it, you, 1, potentially lose your high-paying job, and 2, if there are non-disclosure agreements involved, be subject to possible legal trouble. My grandfather worked for some company that had ties to the government, and whenever I asked him how work was, he would just say it's alright, it's paying the bills, and that's it, no more, as I knew he couldn't tell me, and if they can't understand that, then they ain't good friends in the first place. I was driving to the store and my car crapped out on me, turns out the alternator failed and the engine stalled out. I pulled over to the side of a remote road. It was cold out and I wasn't dressed for the weather without the car's heater. Dumb of me to not wear a warmer coat or think to put a blanket in my car for the winter just in case, but it was supposed to be a quick errand. I called my boyfriend, who lived very close to where I was broken down, and he didn't pick up. I texted him saying I was broken down and I needed a ride, could he help? He said no, he had a friend visiting. I said it was freezing cold and I needed to get out of the cold fast because the car heat was broken too. He said, "Can't you ask a friend, this is a bad time." I called a friend who was 35 minutes away and he got on the road right away, and we made plans to have his brother, who works for a towing company, get it for cheap the next day as a favor. We hung out for a few hours and then I went to bed early. I accidentally left my phone in his car, so when he left he took it along. The next morning, I couldn't find my phone and emailed my friend to ask if he'd seen it. He replied and said he found it in his car and he could bring it back on the weekend. I thanked him and apologized for making him make the trip twice. Anyway, I worked through the day and only checked my social media after the workday. I saw some panicked messages from my boyfriend on my Facebook asking what had happened. I didn't answer his texts for 24 hours after. The last thing I sent was, "Can you please come pick me up, it's freezing cold and I need to get out of the cold fast. The car is broken," and I wasn't picking up my phone or answering texts or social media messages. Then he went for a drive and found my car abandoned in the dirt off the side of the road. He was convinced I had been ignoring him to spite him for not leaving right away to get me. He hasn't realized how serious it was. And he had expected if I had trouble getting a friend to help, I'd call him and tell him I didn't have another option. I said I wasn't being petty, I was just trying to deal with my own crap when my car crapped out on me. And I honestly wasn't thinking about him at all after he brushed off me asking for help. He said that I was stupid for not thinking that he'd be worried to be ghosted for a day after saying I was in trouble. Am I the idiot for not telling my boyfriend I was okay after he didn't want to help me after my car crapped out? Not the idiot. If I were you, I'd dump this guy. Who leaves their SO to freeze on the side of the road in the middle of winter? Oh, and feel free to post the whole exchange on your social media. Let everyone else see just how uncaring and dismissive his response was to you. As far as you're being an idiot for not thinking he'd be worried the next day. If he wasn't worried when you first called him, why should he suddenly care the next day? And if he thinks you were dumb for not giving him an update, you can tell him that you were dumb to try calling him in the first place. Not the idiot. So when I was dating this guy that I thought was going to be the one who ended up cheating on me, my car blew a tire on the side of the road. I called my parents to help me out instead of him. After he cheated, my mom asked me about that incident and said, "Why didn't you call your boyfriend?" That was a moment that I realized that I never actually felt like I could really rely on him to be there for me. It was also a moment I realized that it's a deal breaker for me. So you need to take a look at this seriously and ask, will this guy be there for you? My boyfriend plays games with some of his friends from college and they get really intense about it, like yelling in frustration. It bothers me a lot. I grew up in a rough home and I don't like that environment of screaming and cussing and anger in my home. I've told my boyfriend this and he says he's not really mad, it's just a game, it's just the way he connects with his friends who are competitive people. But to be honest, it bothers me a lot. Last week, I had been napping and I heard a holler and I was immediately woken and feeling panicked. I of course quickly remembered where I was, but I was upset. I really just don't want those energies in my home. I went downstairs and told my boyfriend to stop hollering at home because it's stressing me out. And he kinda brushed it off. Later that night, I called my friend and, as a joke, said I should just have a yell with her. And she was all for it. She went out to the woods behind her house and also grabbed her roommate on the way. It was kinda silly at first, yelling over Skype. But we kinda got into it. My friend was yelling about some crap her boss said, and her roommate and I were yelling back, "Screw that, girl, you need a new job and stuff." It was kind of hard to keep from laughing, and we kept dissolving into giggles. It devolved into one of us shrieking like a maniac, everyone dying laughing, and then repeating. My boyfriend came upstairs at that point. He'd been sitting outside and smoking, and he asked what the hell was going on. I was like, "I'm calling my friends, thought we'd try having a scream." Seemed like a fun way to socialize. He was telling me off saying that hearing women screaming is gonna make someone worried, and I was like, oh no, I'm sure it's fine, screaming into a mic is just normal socializing, right? We talked later, and he said he didn't want me pulling that crap again because it freaked him out to hear me screaming, and I was just like, okay, so do you finally get it? I feel freaked out when you bring that energy into the house too. And he said he didn't think it was the same. He and his friends normally socialize like that. My friends and I were being crazy to make a point. I said that I had a lot of fun having a yell on the call, it felt good, and if he wanted to keep bringing that energy into the house, I'd be doing it too. But if he didn't want that kinda energy around, we could stop it together. He called me ridiculous for this, and yeah, I know it's kinda petty, but I also think I have a point. If he doesn't like me screaming in the house, he should understand I don't like him screaming in the house. Am I the idiot for having a yell while video calling my friends to try to make the point to my boyfriend that is yelling when gaming with his friends is disturbing? Not the idiot. As a guy and a gamer, I hate that. I hate when people yell at TVs, sports, video games. What it does is kick in the flight or fight switch in my brain, and because the anger isn't directed at me, there is nothing to run from and nothing to fight, so I am left there feeling unnecessarily angry and irritated because someone else wants to act like a freaking child at losing a game. Same response as when my girlfriend sees a puppy and makes that noise like we are about to crash the car into something. This is super clearly everyone's the idiot here. Him screaming into a mic is clearly a long-held way of him socializing and playing with friends. He is the idiot for not being quiet when you are sleeping, but if you can't handle his hobby, leave. You are also the idiot for responding to the fact that you don't like his hobby like a 2-year-old throwing a fit. Also, he is dead right that shrieking with no words is far more concerning as a neighbor than yelling at TVs and video games. Again, if you can't get over it and he won't stop, just leave.